Roy's relationship with Pamola started out rather badly. Pamola tries to drive Roy off the mountain in various ways, and finally he demands that Roy find him a wife. Just when Roy is about to give up, he says, "About 4 o'clock I was sitting there gazing up towards Pamola Peak in the knife edge, and thinking how much I hated to leave the place, when all at once there was a sound struck my ears. It was coming up the trail, a scraping and scratching and grinding coming up over the granite rock. Clackety-thump, thumpity-clack. I listened for a moment, and I says, 'There, somebody's coming in with a pack horse.' So I sat there, and I kept looking to see the horse's head coming round the bushes. But instead of a pack horse, here come this big, homely woman. She was over 6 foot tall. Her hair, done up in 2 big braids, hung down over her shoulders, with a pink bow ribbon on each side and a big blue bow on top of her head. Her nose was thin and sharp and hooked down, and her chin was picked and curled up so she could hold a cracker between her nose and chin and eat it, and 'twouldn't bother her a bit. She had just 2 teeth left, one upper and one lower, and they passed by one another when she shut her mouth. She had a long, thin neck and rust spots all over her face, some as big as my pipe bowl. I looked down at her feet. She had on about number 12 men's shoes with the soles so thick they had railroad spikes drove through them for hobnails. She carried a big pack basket and a stout yellow birch walking stick to help her along. I says to myself, well, she ain't much, but perhaps she'll do. So I says to her, "What's your name?" And she says, "My name is Sukey Gildersleeves." "Are you alone?" "Yes," she says, "I'm a single woman. I travel alone. I have no one to travel with me." "Well," I says, "you must be tired." "Oh," she says, "I'm awful tired." I says, "I should think you might be hungry." She says, "I'm very near famished." "Well," I says, "you just sit right down here while I get you something to eat." So she sat down, and I got the skillet and the little kettles on over the fire, and soon I had a feed of victuals on the table. She sat down and started eating. I wanted to tell her about Pamola, but I didn't know how. I never was much of a hand to talk with the ladies. Finally I says to her, "It's a wonder to me that a good-looking woman like you should live alone, as many men as there are looking for wives." "Oh," she says, real pleased and curling her hair with her hands, "is there a man here looking for a wife?" "Oh, yes," I says. "There's a man lives here on the mountain just crazy for a wife." She says, "How far does he live from here?" I says, "'Bout 5-minute walk." She jumped up from the table and says to me, "What you say we go see him?" I says, "As soon as you finish your supper, we'll go." "Oh," she says, "I ain't hungry." So we took a walk down to the end of the pond, and when we come to where all the big boulders are, I pounded on a big slab of rock that was there, and Pamola slid down over the ledges and come down to where we were. He stood there rolling his eyes down on her, his arms folded and his beard blowing in the wind. She was looking up at him, skinning her teeth and looking some pleased. I says to her, "What you think of him?" She looks up at him and says, "He's a man, ain't he?" I says, "Pamola, here's your girl." He says, "Fine. and he gives me a slap on the shoulder. Things is all right between you and me now.